Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guest, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about a journey from our past lives through our present lives and how it really affects how we are interacting in this world. What's really going on? Who were we before? Do you have a lot of deja-vu kind of ideas? Perhaps your dreams and your escapades in wake and sleep time seem to be colliding and you're going, I just don't know who I am, what I'm all about, what I've become, where I've been before, or where I am going today. How many times many of us over the decades have heard things like, man, you have no filter. I don't know where that's coming from. Or that, I don't even know what was said about that. What did you drag up that memory for? Or why are you acting this way? I have no clue where it's coming from. All of the dimensions of time, all of the dimensions of experience, now in the year 2023, seem to be like they are popping little corks off of soda bottles these days. Everything is coming to fruition. Things are coming up in our memories and our timelines. And we are saying, I don't know what the heck. Well, it's time to read a great novel. Find yourself on the pages and say, perhaps, is this happening to me? Is this part of my story? How can I expand in knowing more? My guest today is J R Gonzales. His book is Esmeralda's Web. It's a great read for the summer of 2023, but I will warn you, it is very long. I think it's definitely a full summer read, so to speak. Take it in 3 parts, a little bit each month, and you'll find yourself going into the pages and saying, wow, this is a story you can't put down, but it's also a story that you feel like something is twinging inside of you to open you up. JR, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
So glad to have you, JR. Don't you think the story of, as I shared about your book, it really kind of walks us through the whole book, right?
Yes, it does. I like the way you did that.
You know, I think as I'm in almost 70 myself, and a lot of my dimensions I seem to be sparking upon because I live in New Orleans, I can walk down any street, I can pick up a story, hear some sounds behind me, or I'll have a vision. Do you think that perhaps some people may have had this their entire lives? They haven't recognized it, or they're afraid to speak about it?
Oh, definitely. I think more than anything, they're afraid to speak about it. They deny it because they don't understand it, I think.
Yeah. I think your book is a great escapade, I call it, of exploring through all the dimensions. Can you share briefly how the story starts? Because the story starts from the past timelines. And when we look at the past timelines, you know, we say, does everyone have a past timeline? And you and I are going, yeah, you got about 100 million, who knows, right?
Yes, definitely. It starts at the end of the Spanish Inquisition, and it's basically 2 kids that they share an innocent kiss. Things start happening. They get swept up in the Inquisition. She dies a horrible death, and his follows soon after. And you think it's the end, but it's not the end. It's almost 200 years later. They meet again. They don't know who they were before, but they feel this attraction to each other, and eventually they share the same innocent kiss, and then the nightmares begin again. And this time they know it's for real. So, and that's how it begins.
So I think also, too, how many of us have ever had an awakening kind of moment or a click moment? I know for myself, I was at this affair, and I didn't want to go. My kids kept pushing me to go, so I went. And I was just checking in, and I wasn't there 5 minutes. And I saw this man pass by, and he picked up on my radar, so to speak, and I said, family. And, of course, I honed in and ended up latching on to him because there was some story there that I was supposed to play out. I think we don't even recognize that. And we say, people will say, well, why are you with this person? Or what are you doing or whatever? And it was like I had no answer. It truly was something that had to play out from eons. And again, being here from New Orleans, and I knew what it was, is that he had been a master at one time of me, but I also knew that there were other lifetimes going extremely far back with this person. Do you think that in your book you have many examples of that, but I think also, too, the idea is what do these feel like and how should we recognize them?
To me, it's being familiar in an unfamiliar place or surrounding or a person that I've never met before. It's just a feeling that you know them, that you don't know them, but you feel like you do, and it's so strong you can't ignore it. And yet, most people, like I said, most people do because they don't understand what's going on. I like exploring, like you said, finding the focus and the connection and trying to figure those things out. Not everyone does, though.
Yeah. We see this on, TV all the time. People will say, I felt like I had 1 million lifetimes in 2 hours. And we're going, pay attention, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Can you share how, I think, right on the very first page, they talk about, what they're going to do to a person, and a few more pages it goes on into, the hanging or the beheading or, all of these things that happened to eons ago. And it was just like, I'm not reading these pages because I've had a lot of that in my past lives. I can distinctly remember it, even going past life regression and things like that, I would pick up on it. How do those play out in modern life, and do we even need to pay attention to them? My thought is we need to pay attention to them because some fragment is still left in our knowing. Do you think?
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, definitely. It's like we see a part of the picture, but not all of it, and I mean it's there in front of us, but we need to find the other parts of that. We need to put it all together. It might be a warning from the past of something that happened before that maybe is happening again. Maybe it's a habit we've fallen into that we think is harmless, and yet it's harming us inside. It could be something like that. It could be just something that's leading us to someone that we need in our lives, that we wanted, that we had before, or, we were together before, and we need them to balance our lives, or things like that. That's how I think.
Yeah. Also, too, a lot of times people in the spiritual community these days are saying, oh, well, if you meet someone and it's a negative experience, perhaps they're there to teach you a lesson. And I'm going, maybe they just came to you so they could figure something out. You know what I mean? This whole idea of that ridiculous reflective mirror, it's just like, go away. It doesn't even play upon my stories these days. I think sometimes when we meet people and something is, going like, haywire, whatever, sometimes it's like, as you said, it's to pick up that fragment and be able to move around through it. Because if you think of the shamans, as myself as a shaman, we have to go back. We need to be able to find those soul fragments, put the puzzle pieces back together again, love it and honor it, and release it. Well, it doesn't matter the topic. It could be it could be witch, it could be shaman, it could be intuitive, it could be knowing, it could be whatever label you want to put on it. We are all in the same similar process. Do you think?
Yes, I agree. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense that way.
Yeah, well, we got so stuck in it. I think religion was the fear that said don't ever do those kinds of things. So now that a lot of people are away from their religions, perhaps maybe they're delving in and saying, what is the story? Tell me more. And they're starting to write down whatever's coming to them. Don't you think your book is about whatever you came to you and also your characters?
Definitely. As I created them or put them in the story, I have to say I had an image that came to me of certain people, and like you said already, it was people that I didn't know,
right? And
I just tried to give them a character, a personality, and put them in the story. So yes, I agree with that.
I think sometimes I have this one place that I always walk down the street, and I have a full story that plays out in my head, and then. Several years later, I went back to it, and I said, well, who are you? What's your name? And instantly, there was like, I was reading a book. The whole story played out. And I said, oh, awesome. I think a lot of times, even if you look at it, people who are doing movies and things, where does that stuff come from? It comes from people, places, and things that were in their subconscious mind, and it came to fruition in like maybe something that you would call instantaneous writing, where you don't even think about it. It just starts to come out and you write it, or thoughts that you start to draw out, or people or places that you start to engage with. How did your book engage in that process?
I'm not sure. I am not sure I can explain that. It's just there are times where I sat down to write, and it's like someone else was writing. My fingers were flying, and my pages were adding up, and things were happening, and all of a sudden it's like 2 hours later, and I've got 20 pages that I go back and read because I want to make sure I didn't typo or any grammatical errors. But and there's maybe a few a misspelled word or something, but so I in that regard, I can see what you're saying, and yes, that does happen more often than not. I think sometimes.
Yeah, I think it has to come from somewhere. In other words, we're not sitting down, we're doing writing or even this radio show and putting the words together in our minds. In other words, they're not filtering it through something. Don't you think you and I probably live more or less in a land of no filters and stuff just comes in and out more frequently?
Definitely. Definitely. I get asked a lot of times, where does that stuff come from? Where do you, in fact, I've even been told, you're such a nice guy. Where do you get all this, this stuff? I mean, they used a different word at the end. But
yeah,
it kind of made, I took it as a huge compliment, but at the same time, I was like, but it's there. I mean, it came to me. You watch the news and see what happens as you live your life out. You see things that you don't agree with, that you don't understand, but maybe we're not made to understand those things. Maybe when we see somebody doing something insane, killing people, and we can't fathom why. It's not in us to understand that. But that other person is acting out something that happened in a past life. Maybe they're killing an enemy that they fought 100 years ago. We don't know.
Right. Especially when they come up with the words, I don't remember. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Where people will say they're looking for the details for someone else to tell them because they don't really have an answer. And sometimes people will say, well, you're being obstinate, rude, not, withholding, whatever all those other human words are. But I think if you take a lot of that human words away, you can see the patterns that play out, don't you think?
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Let's talk for a second, JR, about the idea of light and darkness. A lot of times people will say, but it's always living in the dark. Those are dark stories. Those are dark times. Those are dark pains. And I always say, well, everything's behind us is dark, okay? Everything in front of us is light. Let's make it as simple as that. How's that? And then they kind of go, oh, okay. Instead of putting a negative connotation on the darkness, and saying that the light is superior, I just say the light's behind, in front of us and the dark's behind us. So move through it. Do you think perhaps the idea of dark stories, dark times, and dark beliefs and truths really is a lot of the core of your book?
But yes, definitely. And I like that. I had never thought of it that way. It kind of sounds like because it's in the past, it's dark. We can't go back. We can't change it. And the future is light because it's ahead of us. We can see the road. We can see things happening in front of us instead of thinking about how they happened before. That makes a lot of sense. I never thought of it that way.
Well, I think it's a little bit easier because you have a lot of naysayers that keep pounding on that word dark, I don't want to go to the dark energy. I don't want to go to that dark negative stuff. And I'm going, why is your past life a dark energy? I don't see that. Do you know what I mean? It's a dark
I agree with you.
moment because it's in the past. In other words, its light has dimmed. The story, if you're in the story, think about it as a movie screen or a play. The light is on you while you're on stage and then it dims, right? It's just a normal progression.
Right.
Can you share, JR, how Esmeralda's Web is a story of being there? I think perhaps you jump into the character in all of that past life and walk the characters through to the present life time. So in other words, every single diversion plays out as they went through all of these centuries of their lifetime.
They carry their past in their memories, but they're so far back or so embedded in their soul or their spirit or their past that they don't think about it. They don't give it any conscious thought. It's like saying I don't like anchovies on my pizza. It's something that that's inside of you, and maybe you can't explain why. I don't, but I don't question people who do. But at the same time, maybe that's why there's things like that in our psyche. Like people say, well, why do you turn the light on 3 times when you enter a room? I don't know. It's something. It's a habit. It's a feeling that I can't ignore.
It's interesting because there's so many health conditions out there that have repetitive behaviors, that have strange behaviors. There are many people, unlawfully and unwillingly and never should be. And they're in mental health hospitals and they're in other places that they shouldn't be because perhaps they started to speak out about these stories, share about their dreams, and say, I don't know, and then just kind of unconsciously or subconsciously blurb out part of their soul story, and people take it as they got to be crazy. They got to be put away. Don't you think that's been done over many, many eons of life, even going back to the beginning, of history time all the way through till now?
Yes, definitely. There are a lot of people that do belong in there, and there are people that belong in there that are walking the streets, but not everyone that is in there belongs there, and not everyone that's in there is going to get the help they need because they are trapped in there. They have no way to get out. Their doctor's order put them in there because, like you said, they were acting bizarre. They were talking about things that people didn't understand or they didn't like or they couldn't accept, and so they started saying, so what's wrong with you? And then eventually they end up in something like that, and they can't get out because they can't change. They can't stop it.
Do you think perhaps your story sheds some light where people can connect to this, but when they connect to it, then they're able to start sharing stories with other people? This is what we want, I think, in the year 2023, is can we be freer with our voice? Can we open up and share these stories? That's what we want people to do. Just as reading your book, definitely over the summer, a lot of people will have a lot of conversations over vacations, or so to speak. and ask, hey, did you ever feel this? What's this about? I don't understand this part, and people will start to have conversations. Isn't that what our purpose is in you writing the book or us having this discussion today?
Yes, I agree. It's we do need to open up more. We need to understand things that we don't understand, or we need to try to understand things that we don't understand, and be open to ideas that are new to us, that are maybe odd to us but normal to someone else.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
That would make us all better.
Because I've been open my entire life, saw ghosts, saw angels, knew all of the energies and everything, knew things before they happen. Every single one of those things I have. And I can distinctly remember one day I said to myself, do you mean people are not all like me? I didn't know that. I thought everybody was the same as me, being open. And all of a sudden, my world just took a hit through the black hole. It was like, whoa, y'all are nothing like me. I'm different than that. And then I think that's where a lot of people come into the point and they say, if I'm different, then I'm not accepted in the world. I'm not good in the world. I'm not, quote, liked, hugged, or shared, or whatever it needs to be. And in this world that we're in, that's kind of a problem for a lot of people that are really experiencing this awareness in their life.
I agree. It's like we don't want to, like a lot of people don't want to stand out. They don't want to be, they think if they stand out, their head's going to get lopped off, or they're going to get ostracized and put away and stuff just because they're not a team player.
Right. And actually, whatever they're thinking, what you just shared, those words, might be their past life stuff. So exactly, if you look at it, it's got to be a full circle kind of thing. We don't speak up because we have a fear. We think it's reality in today's purpose. However, it may have nothing to do with our present moment. It may be coming something from a past life that wasn't completed, closed the door, or detached from. Perhaps?
They actually they kind of go blindly. Because they're not fully aware of what's going on. They don't fully understand. They have these feelings and these things that are happening, and as the visions come back and return to them, they know they're real and they know they happen, but they don't understand because they don't know reincarnation, and they can't go to their parents. Well, she's an orphan, and he can't go to his parents because they raised him Catholic, and reincarnation is taboo. It's something we don't talk about in this house. And so they have to find their own way through there. Eventually they find someone that they think can help them, but she's not able to help them either. It's up to them. They have to find a way between the two of them to defeat the evil that's chasing them, that's trying to destroy them again.
Yeah. I think a lot of times people are super afraid that something from the past is going to take them out in this lifetime. And it really isn't. It's the energy of perhaps the mind, the energy of the soul and the spirit. So it can be just as simple as taking care of it and figuring it out. However, it could be just as difficult as running in fear of it all the time because you don't want to delve into that pot. So
yes.
Do you think sometimes people become so afraid of the connotations around the experience that they don't even touch it?
Well, definitely. That's why I said they deny it. They hide from it. They run from it. They certainly don't tell anyone about it because, again, they don't want to be ostracized or thought of as defective or sick or ill or whatever the proper term is.
Right.
Definitely.
I think what's really good about your book is that you can walk through the characters. Even though it is large, it does take you on a grand journey, through centuries. And that's perhaps what we need is someone to say, show me what the path may look like. There's a lot of gurus out there, they'll say, or coaches, they'll say, here's a template, follow it through, I'll stand on the side, and I'll rah-rah you all the way through. And that's not at all what your book is about. Your book is about opening up a can of worms, so to speak, to be able to see what shows up. Do you think perhaps that it was super beneficial for your characters? Might it also work out for others that decide, oh, let's just take this journey through my mind, my consciousness, and not have fear?
Oh, definitely. I think we all need to explore those feelings. We need to follow them, even if we just do it, like you said, in our mind. If we follow them and see where they go and what they did, and it could give us answers as to who we are now and what we need to do to make our lives right.
Yeah. It's so interesting, JR. I had this one person on the phone one time, a guest, and he had gone into his past life and then did his genealogy or whatever, either one or the other, I forget what it was. And he came up that he was this very important person eons and eons ago. And he kind of stuck to that label that that's who he is today. And he started to wear the clothes, use the words, almost changed his name to that other person or a shade of it. I think that's kind of a lot of fears in people's lives, is that, well, if I was that in the past, am I that in the present? Your thoughts?
Definitely. That could go both ways, though. It could be maybe they murdered someone in the past and they're afraid, I'm not that person now. I'm a good man or a good woman. I have a family. I have kids. I go to PTA. I go to church on Sunday. I pray hard through my heart and everything else. How could I have done that? So they're afraid of that. They deny it and they don't explore it. Or on the other hand, they were a saint. They were the most forgiving and understandable and patient person in the whole world, and now they're a curmudgeon. They're someone who's bitter about life and their lot, and they blame everyone else around them. They don't. It could be either way.
Right. Well, I think that gets kind of scary, though, when you think about it. People say, I don't know how to dance through this process. Are there several tips in your book how to move through these processes? There's
just, if you follow the story, there are ways that they did it. They talked things out. They said, okay, well, let's try this. Let's experiment and see where it goes. And at one point they thought it was almost like a game, like, okay, let's kiss again and see what happens. But the more they delved into that, the more they found their answers, the things they needed to know.
Yeah. I think it's so important to find a cohort, someone else to walk alongside of you. You know what I mean? Someone to say, let me bounce this off of you, and not get back judgment or something like that. Someone that says, I'm going to let my mind flow free, just as you did with your pen. Others can do it with other people that they may know. Isn't that what we're really hoping for? Yes,
definitely. Having someone next to you, either saying that you can bounce your ideas off of without their eyes widening or them expressing shock or surprise or disgust, but also having someone telling you, you know what, it's okay. It's this is you now and that was you then, or it's okay to express that. It's okay to talk to me about that. It doesn't make you a bad person.
It's interesting. I cannot tell you how many bazillions of times in my life I would start a sentence to talk with someone, and I would notice that they were just out to lunch, and I would stop mid-sentence, and they wouldn't even notice. And then I would wait a little while, and I'd come back and say, did you hear what I said? And they're like, no, were you talking? And I'm going, interesting, And I got really annoyed with it or really angry with it. It was like, damn it, can't anybody listen? You know what I mean? Or why aren't you hearing? And finally I got to the point was I'm in a different dimension, in a different space and time, and y'all are just, I don't know where you are, but this is where I am. And I think that's important, too, to understand. Because when you're in these different dimensions of, like, writing or speaking or your dream state or whatever, other people can't come into that space or time. We can relay what we and report. However, they can't come into that if they aren't ready. Don't you think?
Right. Yes, I agree. I had a conversation like that one time where I was talking to someone and I noticed that they weren't listening. And it kind of brings to mind the feeling that people, when you're talking, they've already formed an opinion on what you're saying, and they're thinking of their answer as you're trying to explain something. So they're missing all the important keys. But what I did to this one person was similar to what you did. I just, right in the middle of the story, I changed it. And I said, an alligator bit off my arm and chocolate sauce came out.
Mm-hmm.
And when they didn't react for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then all of a sudden they stopped. What? And then I laughed, and I said, you weren't even listening. You didn't hear a thing I said.
That's
and
right.
I was right.
Yeah, I do that quite often. And I've even gotten to the point where, I almost, okay, so we don't use judgment on this radio show. So I would be sitting there and I would wanting to say something to somebody. However, I would just say it and not understand that they were listening or not listening. And they would say, "Are you talking to yourself?" And I'd go and I'd laugh it off and I'd go, yeah, uh-huh. Because sometimes people get in these realms where their words don't even land with someone else. So they're like, but I still need to hear my voice to know I'm a human being still in this space and time. So what I say is just go ahead and speak it. They hear it, they hear it. They don't. And just laugh it off and let it go. Perhaps?
Yes, an experience. Something you're still bouncing it off of people, and the reaction, you're not maybe getting the reaction you wanted, but you're still getting something, and you're getting something out of it, even if they aren't.
Right. Well, I think sometimes the energy has to go somewhere. It has to come out of us and flow, and we don't have to worry about always the other person that receives it. Just as your book, there may be parts in it and you'll say, oh, I don't know about this part, flip over it. Or others may say, oh, I'm developed, a story of my own with every single word on this page. And isn't that cool? So the idea is find your voice and release it and let it see where it takes you on a journey, perhaps?
Yes. Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea.
Well, because sometimes we, just as you shared in the beginning of the show, we don't want people to walk in and say, I was there too, I did that too, like jump into your story that you wrote. We want them to experience your story and then find their own. Perhaps, I think sometimes people will say, but what does my own story mean? How do you think you could share with others for them to find their own story?
They just have to, like you said, open their minds, be open to the experience, and don't be quick to judge it. Don't. Oh no, that's wrong. That's bad. That's not me. Let it go where it's going to go, and like you said, even if it's in your mind, you're seeing it, you're understanding it, you're experiencing it, and you're letting it out. And maybe letting it out, maybe it would have been, if you kept it in, it would have been festered like that black pearl that gives you cancer. It could be harming your body, but if you let it out and you let it out freely without trying to decide if it's a good or a bad thing, or like you say, the dark thing, and you'll be much better off. You might even enjoy it. It might help you with your life and problems you're facing now.
Absolutely. Let's talk about sometimes the words that others speak to you. And then you start to say, ooh, where did that come from? And you may have a vision of their story. Do you share it with them?
Oh, I definitely would. I would tell them, partly because if that ends up in a story, I don't want them to think, he was just talking to me to get parts for his book. But if I'm talking to someone and they give me an idea for something, I'll tell them, what just occurred to me is in this one story that I wrote, this relates to what you're talking about. And it could have been, I could have expanded it with what you just said and maybe made it more clear for people to understand what I was trying to say. But I didn't see that until you presented it to me.
Yeah. I think sometimes
kind of giving them credit.
Yeah, I think sometimes people get afraid to speak, to people like you or I, because they'll say, "Ooh, they might be seeing something inside of me that I don't want them to see," or they're hiding their shame or their guilt or whatever that might be. Sometimes that shame and guilt has nothing to do with the present. It might be totally something from the past. It could be eons. It could be last lifetime. It could be 2 weeks ago. So I think sometimes we ask, what are shame and guilt and where does that come from? Maybe?
Yeah. I could see that. I could see people, like I said, they're afraid of what happened before. They're denying it. They don't want to claim it as something that they did 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago. It's not them anymore, and yet it is because it's still inside of them. But they're afraid to let that out.
Yeah, I think that's so important what you just said. It's not part of them anymore. I can honestly say in closing, there's many days that I would sit here and I would have something come up. And instantly I would say, stay in the present, I'm in the present. Stay in the present, I'm in the present. And I would just keep repeating that. And it could be either a pain in my body or a vision or a dream, or it could be something someone is saying or something that I would have to respond to, and I didn't want the response. I would just say, stay in the present, stay in the present. And I think when I say stay in the present, instantly things that have an energy other than that don't seem to be as strong. They don't seem to take over the moment, so to speak. Like sometimes when people will say, you could be 80 years old, and someone could come up and make a comment. I saw one line in your book, and it says, I'll wipe that smile right off your face, or I'll rip that smile right off your face. Look, JR, I have heard that word my entire lifetime from a particular person. And let me tell you, and I'm going, oh, well, okay then, But we still get triggered from many lifetimes. And it's just like, whoa, we, stay in the present. Let it go. Don't you think?
I agree.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult, I think, sometimes when people say, where do I go from here? And can you share with the listeners, perhaps, JR, about more information about how to find your work?
Well, you can find my books on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, pretty much anywhere. They're going to be rebranded soon to where I'm trying to put them in my own name instead of self-publishing through others. And in that way, I can attract a major publisher. But right now, they are available. And if you want to read Esmeralda's Web in its entirety, the best version out there is the Ex Libris version, which I don't normally promote them because they've never paid me. But it's the best book, the best version of it out there. Because there is a time where I was going to split it in 2 books, and that publisher didn't. I don't know how to explain it. I have publishers that didn't do what they promised they were going to do, and that was one of them. So I do like your idea of splitting it in 3, though. Because, well, see, my argument there was if I split it in 3 or 2 books, I feel kind of like I'm making my readers pay twice for the same book, and I'm not trying to get rich off my readers. I want them to have fun.
Right.
But then at the same time, one book was at one time was $40 for that book, and that's way too much. That's way too much to pay for a book, and I don't want people to look at the price tag as much as, oh, JR wrote this book. I know it's going to be a story.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, JR, I think you need to split it in 3 and just say phase 1. In the darkness, phase 2, coming out of the darkness, phase 3, what is the light, right? There you go. There's your 3 titles.
I like that.
Awesome. Well, JR, it was such a pleasure to have you with us here today to dance in all of the realms and dimensions. I think it's also being able to say we're free and we are okay. And that's what we really want to get, across to people is that we are okay in the moment. So many times people will say, I'm afraid that something might happen to me, and we're going, it can't really happen to you. You're going to be just fine. And that's what we want to share with others, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. We are okay.
Yeah. You know, it's so interesting, JR. I had written this word, Thought for the Week. I posted it on Facebook today. It says, when we use or hear the words, I am going to be okay, might we consider it to mean, I am releasing fear of the unknown or unknown, I understand that I am eternal, and anything past my breath is a gift, and I am okay. That's what we want to share, right?
Yes, that's beautiful. I like that.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's a little bit harder for people to understand it. So what we've done today is we've given them hope. So I thank you so much for joining us today, JR.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
If you'd like to find out more information about J R Gonzales, again, his book is Esmeralda's Web, please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page. Go directly to Amazon to be able to purchase his book. And it truly is about being able to say, it's okay. Go through the dance, through the ethers, go through the past, be in the present. It is everything that we've experienced in our conscious, subconscious, and unconscious mind. Just let it flow freely. Perhaps you will go on an adventure just as well as JR did and be able to write it down. And isn't that the absolute delight of our life? Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit dr-jeanette-gallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.